The universe had always been a balance, a delicate equilibrium maintained for eons by forces beyond comprehension. Stars were born, galaxies collided, and civilizations rose and fell in the blink of an eye. But now, that balance was beginning to crumble. The ancient forces that governed the universe, forces older than time itself, had started to unravel. And at the center of it all was something no one fully understood: the energy. It wasn't a physical thing, like matter or light. It wasn't something you could touch, taste, or feel with your senses. It was the pulse of the cosmos, the invisible force that kept everything together. Every planet, every galaxy, every living creature, all of it was tied to this energy, the unspoken foundation of the universe itself. But the energy had begun to fracture. It was no longer flowing the way it should. It had become unpredictable, erratic, and uncontrollable. And as the cracks began to appear, so did the first signs of the end. On the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, a small, insignificant planet on the outskirts of a forgotten star system was the first to feel the effects. Pauron, a planet inhabited by a race of beings that called themselves the Nara, was not known for anything extraordinary. Their technology was rudimentary at best, their civilization scattered and isolated, and they had little understanding of the grand forces at play beyond their atmosphere. But they felt the shift. They saw the sky darken, the stars flicker as if blinking in and out of existence. The Nara, in their simplicity, had no idea what was happening, but the high priests of their order, those who communed with the energy, sensed the disturbance immediately. "It is the end," the high priestess Naira whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of the truth. "The energy has begun to unravel." Her words were met with fear, with uncertainty, but she was not wrong. Something had changed. And for the first time in the Nara's existence, they were aware that the universe was not infinite, its very existence was fragile, and now it was on the brink of destruction. Across the galaxy, the ancient energy began to awaken, and it was not alone. The source of the disturbance was not a natural phenomenon, but something far more sinister, a being, a force, one that had been dormant for eons, lying beneath the surface of the universe like a sleeping titan. And now, it was rising. On the other side of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of the Nara, the Council of the Celestial Order, beings of unimaginable power who had long monitored the universe's stability, had received an alarming transmission. The energy, once a steady, predictable force, was beginning to ripple with instability. Stars were flickering out. Galaxies were warping. Time itself seemed to slow and speed up in random bursts. Something was breaking the laws of physics, something that had been long buried and forgotten. The Council's leaders, beings of immense knowledge and power, convened in the grand hall of their floating citadel. Each member stood surrounded by glowing holograms of the galaxy, their eyes fixed on the shifting, chaotic patterns unfolding before them. The disturbance was not just a ripple, it was an impending wave, one that threatened to wash over everything they had worked to protect. "What do we do?" asked Arvash, a member of the council with pale, ethereal skin and eyes that glowed like the stars. "The energy cannot be contained much longer. If it continues like this, the universe will collapse in on itself." "The universe is already collapsing," said Murda, the eldest of the council, her voice grave. "And we are not the cause of it. This is something far beyond our understanding. The energy has a will of its own. We have spent millennia watching it, controlling it, but now it is moving beyond us." "What are you suggesting?" Arvash demanded, his voice growing louder. "We have the power to stop this. We can harness the energy, contain it." "We..." "No," Murda interrupted, her voice cold. "We cannot control this. It is beyond our reach now. The energy is becoming sentient, and its awakening is something we cannot stop. The universe is on the brink of annihilation, and we are powerless to halt it." The room fell into a heavy silence. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, each one realizing the weight of the truth. For the first time, they were not the most powerful beings in existence. There was something greater, something older, something far more dangerous than they could have ever anticipated. But the real question lingered in the air, unanswered: Who, or what, was controlling the energy? As the council members sat in silence, a young, curious Nara child on Powron stared at the sky. The stars had begun to flicker erratically, and in her innocence, she felt a strange pull, a whisper, a call from the energy itself. Her small hands reached out, as if to touch the invisible thread that now tied her to the unraveling cosmos. And that was when the ground trembled. The tremor rippled through Powron's surface, a sharp and sudden force that sent cracks running through the ground like spiderwebs. Buildings shuddered, and the once peaceful landscapes were torn asunder in moments. The Nara people, though not technologically advanced, had always lived in harmony with their planet. They knew its every rhythm, its every quiver. But this was different. This wasn't just the earth beneath them shaking, it was the pulse of the universe itself breaking. High Priestess Naira, standing in the heart of the ancient temple, felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. Her eyes widened as she closed her hands around the sacred stone, the one artifact that connected the Nara to the cosmic energy that had always flowed through their lives. For centuries, the stone had guided her people, allowing them to channel and understand the energy. But now, it hummed with an intensity she had never felt before. It wasn't a message, it was a scream, a cry for help from the energy itself. The energy is dying, Naira whispered to herself, though she had no one to share the burden with. It was as though the very fabric of existence had been torn, the energy itself unraveling like the delicate threads of a woven tapestry. Outside the temple, panic spread. The Nara had never known such chaos. Their world had always been a tranquil one, untouched by the wars and conflicts that plagued other civilizations. But now, they saw their skies darken, their stars blink out one by one, and the sun itself flicker. It was as though the universe was taking its last breath. Far across the galaxy, in the citadel of the Celestial Council, Murda's voice resonated with the weight of an unspoken truth. She had seen the signs, the warnings that none of the other members had dared to mention. There was something far older than even the Council's ancient race that was stirring, something beyond their comprehension. The energy is waking, she said again, this time with a certainty that made the Council members shiver. And it is not a natural awakening. It is being provoked, by something. Someone. Arvash, his glowing eyes narrowed, stood and paced across the holographic map that displayed the spiraling chaos of the universe. The stars, once steady points of light, were now flickering erratically, and entire sectors of space were folding in on themselves. The simulation showed an increasing instability in the fabric of spacetime, threatening to collapse entire galaxies into singularities. It's happening too fast, Arvash muttered, a sense of dread filling his chest. We can't just watch it unfold any longer. We have to intervene. Murda turned to face him, her features creased with an ancient wisdom. You don't understand, Arvash. It's not something we can control. The energy has been bound for millennia. We could manage it, even guide it, but we never owned it. We're not the only ones aware of this, there are others in the galaxy who seek the same power. And some might be more dangerous than we can fathom. Arvash stopped pacing, the realization hitting him like a bolt of lightning. You're saying that this awakening, could be deliberate? Someone is forcing the energy to act against the natural order? Murda nodded grimly. Yes. There are ancient entities, races older than the Council itself, who've been dormant for eons. They've remained hidden, waiting for this moment. And now they're stirring, and with them, their influence over the energy will spread, changing everything. As the Council debated what actions to take, their thoughts remained consumed by one terrifying realization: who could wield the energy? What kind of being could provoke such chaos? And more importantly, what were they planning to do with the power they were awakening? Meanwhile, back on Powron, Naira could feel the shift. The child who had unknowingly touched the energy was now on the move, running through the streets of the village, drawn to something unknown, something that called to her. Her name was Asha, and she was the youngest of the Nara, barely 8 years old. But even she could sense the change. The ground beneath her feet was shifting, the air humming with static energy that made her skin tingle. Asha's small hand reached toward the sky, as if reaching for the stars themselves. Her eyes were wide with wonder and fear. The energy was there, just beyond her reach, calling to her. In that moment, she felt as if she could see the entire universe, as if it were unfolding before her like a tapestry of light and shadow. But Asha was not the only one who felt the call. High above, in the vastness of space, a ship appeared. Its design was unlike anything the Nara had ever seen, sleek and angular, shimmering with a dark, almost otherworldly energy. It was a vessel built not from metal, but from something far more ancient, a material that seemed to pulse with the very energy of the cosmos itself. On board the ship, a figure stood, watching the planet below. His eyes were black as the void, his body cloaked in shadows that seemed to ripple with the energy that he controlled. His name was Zorath, and he was the one responsible for the energy's awakening. Zorath had waited for this moment for centuries. He had known that the universe's balance would one day shatter, that the energy would break free from its ancient bonds. And when it did, he would be there to claim it. The galaxy would bow to him, and all its power would be his to control. The universe, once fractured, would be unified under his rule. The Nara's world was about to change. And Zorath, with his ancient knowledge and his mastery over the energy, would ensure that it was changed forever. The ground beneath Pauron trembled once again, but this time, the vibration felt different, more intense, more purposeful. It was as if the planet itself had sensed the arrival of something ancient and malevolent. The Nara, who had once lived in harmony with their world, now found themselves at the mercy of forces they couldn't comprehend. The atmosphere was thick with a palpable sense of dread, and the skies above pulsed with unnatural energy. Asha, still standing at the edge of the village, felt the change more acutely than anyone else. The whisper that had called to her from the energy was louder now, almost deafening. She clutched her chest, her heart racing in tune with the cosmic pulse that seemed to be drawing her towards something vast, something far beyond the comprehension of her people. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. She didn't understand why she was the one chosen, why her, but there was no denying that the energy had a connection to her. It had been awakened by her touch, and now it was leading her somewhere. Without thinking, Asha started running. Her legs moved faster than she had ever run before, as though the energy was guiding her steps. The streets of her village blurred in her peripheral vision, and the distant cries of her people echoed in the background, but she didn't slow down. She was drawn to the mountains, to the sacred peak that had long been a place of reverence for the Nara. Meanwhile, the Nara elders gathered in the central temple, their faces twisted with worry. They had never seen the energy behave this way, never felt its power so raw, so uncontrolled. High Priestess Naira paced in front of the others, her hands clenched into fists. "The child, Asha, she is the key," Naira said, her voice low, filled with both awe and fear. "She touched the energy. She is the one who has awakened it. If she reaches the peak, she will activate something far more dangerous than we can comprehend." A sudden murmur ran through the elders. The sacred peak was said to be the birthplace of the Nara's connection to the cosmic energy. It was there, in ancient times, that the first Nara were said to have communed with the energy and received their gifts, the ability to harness the flow of the universe. But the legends also spoke of a price. The energy, when awakened, could either save or destroy the world. "Send someone after her," one of the elders urged. "We cannot let her approach the peak alone. There is no telling what will happen if she reaches it." Naira's eyes darkened. She had seen what was coming, an ancient force, stirring to life, threatening to consume everything in its wake. The galaxy was on the verge of collapse, and the energy that had once been a force of creation had now become a force of destruction. Asha, with her innocent touch, had unknowingly unlocked the path to that power, and there was no way to reverse it. But it wasn't just Asha that Naira worried about. The others were coming, too. High above the planet, Zorath's ship hovered in the dark expanse of space, its engines thrumming with the energy it absorbed. Zorath, standing on the observation deck, watched the unfolding events on Pauron through a holographic interface. His cold, black eyes narrowed as he observed the chaos below. The Nara had no idea what they had unleashed, but he did. The energy was his to command now, and Asha, the child, was the final piece of the puzzle. "It's almost time," Zorath murmured to himself, his voice barely audible. "Soon, the galaxy will kneel before me." He wasn't the only one who had been watching Pauron, though. As Zorath's eyes gleamed with victory, a ripple of disturbance tore through the surrounding galaxies. In the far reaches of the universe, where few dared to go, there were beings, ancient ones, who had been waiting for this very moment. They had sensed the awakening of the energy and the tremors it caused across spacetime. They had been dormant for eons, but the disturbance had pulled them from their slumber. One such being, a massive creature made of swirling energy in dark matter, hovered just outside the fabric of reality, its form ever-changing, ever-shifting. It was an ancient entity, known to few, feared by many. It had no name, but it was known as the Harbinger of the Void, a being that thrived on the collapse of reality itself. "It is beginning," the Harbinger whispered, its voice an unsettling blend of cosmic winds and deep, resonating tones. "The energy is waking. And with it, the universe will fall into chaos. But I will claim it first." It's true that Zorath had already set his plans in motion, but the Harbinger wasn't concerned with him. The energy wasn't something Zorath could control, not completely. The Harbinger knew that the power of the energy was more ancient, more uncontrollable than anything Zorath could wield. And it intended to harness it for itself. Back on Pauron, Asha had reached the base of the sacred peak. Her body was covered in sweat, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but she didn't stop. The air around her shimmered, crackling with energy as she climbed higher. The closer she got to the summit, the more intense the sensation became, an overwhelming pull that seemed to guide her every step. And at the peak, the energy lay in wait, silent, patient. It had always been there, hidden beneath the surface of the universe, its true power dormant until now. Asha reached the summit, and as she touched the stone at the very top, the sky above exploded in a blinding light. The energy responded. And the universe trembled. The universe screamed in agony. As Asha's fingers touched the stone at the peak of Pauron's sacred mountain, a violent wave of energy rippled outward from her. It wasn't a flash of light, it was a force, a primal surge that cracked the very fabric of reality. Stars flickered and died in an instant. Time stretched and warped, and the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, suspended between moments, between life and death. Asha, standing on the peak, felt the power coursing through her. It was as if every molecule of her being was vibrating with the energy of the cosmos itself. She could feel it in her bones, in the deepest parts of her soul. She was not just part of the universe now, she was the universe, its heartbeat, its pulse, its life and its destruction. Her mind raced, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what was happening. She was connected to the energy, but she was also at its mercy. It was no longer a tool, it was a force that controlled her. And the universe was unraveling. Back on the Nara homeworld, the ground shook violently. The sky above twisted into strange, swirling patterns of colors and light that defied the laws of physics. The Nara, once peaceful and unaware of the vast forces at play, were now witnesses to the end of the world as they knew it. They had no words for what was happening, only fear. High Priestess Naira watched from the temple, her eyes wide with terror. She had known that the energy was capable of great things, but she had never imagined it could unravel the very fabric of the universe. The ancient texts had spoken of such moments, of the awakening of power that could tear everything apart. And now, in front of her, that moment had come to pass. "It's too late," Naira whispered, tears streaming down her face as she saw the light of the collapsing universe bleed into the sky. "We've awakened something beyond our control." But it wasn't just the Nara who were affected. Far across the galaxy, in the dark, empty void where ancient beings stirred, the Harbinger of the Void had felt the shift. It wasn't the same as the energy that Zorath had sought to control. This was something beyond, something ancient, untamed, and chaotic. The Harbinger had been waiting, biding its time, and now, as the universe seemed to fold in on itself, it knew its time had come. The entity moved through the rift in the fabric of space-time, its massive form stretching beyond comprehension. It had waited for eons for the universe to reach this point, to reach the brink of annihilation. And now, as the energy began to surge, it prepared to seize it, to claim it for itself. Zorath, aboard his ship, had sensed the shift too. His cold eyes widened as the intensity of the energy nearly overwhelmed him. His hand trembled as he reached toward the control panel, trying desperately to harness the power that had once been in his grasp. But this was no longer his power. The energy was wild, untamable, and it was slipping from his control. "What is this?" Zorath muttered, his voice a mix of awe and fear. "No one told me it would be like this." The energy was no longer just a force to be wielded. It was alive. It had its own will. And that will was no longer content to be controlled by any being, no matter how ancient, how powerful. Back on Pauron, Asha stood, trembling, as the energy surged through her. It was as if her body were being torn apart, stretched across the galaxy. She could feel the entire universe, its pain, its joy, its life and death, all coursing through her, binding her to everything and everyone. She was everything. And nothing. Her voice echoed in the silence of her mind, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion. "What have I done?" The energy, in its infinite power, whispered to her. Not in words, but in feeling. It spoke of creation, of destruction, of balance and chaos. And through it, Asha understood, she had not awakened the energy. She had become it. She was now the fulcrum on which the universe teetered, the last line between life and oblivion. With the power of the energy flowing through her, she knew what had to be done. She could feel the immense weight of responsibility pressing down on her. The energy could destroy everything, it could unravel the universe, cause it to collapse in on itself, as it had already begun to do. But there was also another option. The energy could heal, could restore balance, could create a new beginning from the ashes of the old universe. But Asha wasn't sure she could control it. And in that moment, standing on the edge of everything, she realized that the future of the universe rested in her hands. The universe could be saved, or it could be destroyed. It was a choice she had never asked for, a burden she wasn't prepared to bear, but she had no choice. She was the only one who could stop it, or let it unfold. She closed her eyes and concentrated, feeling the surge of the energy settle into her core. She reached out with her mind, trying to connect, trying to understand the will of the energy. The force was immense, and it was almost too much to bear, but Asha held firm. Control it, she thought, restore balance. And in that moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The swirling chaos began to calm. The ripples of energy slowed, and the stars, those that had not already faded, began to flicker back into existence. Time itself seemed to right itself, and the fabric of reality reknit. The Harbinger, feeling its grasp on the energy slip away, withdrew back into the void, its hunger unsatisfied. Zorath, too, found his influence waning, the power he had sought slipping like sand through his fingers. Asha, still trembling, stood alone atop the mountain. The energy, once so wild, now flowed around her, contained, balanced. The universe was no longer on the brink of annihilation. It was saved, for now. But the cost of this victory had been high. The energy had taken its toll on Asha, and as the light of the universe began to settle, she collapsed to her knees, exhausted, her body and mind shattered by the immense power she had channeled. She had saved the universe, but at what cost? What would the universe become now that it had been forever changed? The stars were safe, for now. But the energy had awakened, and Asha knew that one day, it would call again.